So a little over a month ago, I got back into rollerblading after stopping for at least 10 years. Before that, I skated a lot for most of my life and just slowly stopped. And for some reason, about a month ago, it seems like a whole bunch of other people got the bug again, but I started skating again more regularly. About a year before that, I started thinking about it again, and I ended up getting a new pair of K2 on naturals, and I felt like I couldn't skate at all, and it didn't come back. Nothing came back to me, and it felt all weird. So I assumed that the ship had sort of sailed. But what I didn't realize is that it was just those skates were just a very poor fit, and not in terms of how they fit my foot, just they weren't a good match for my skating. They were really stiff. They weren't like anything I'd ever skated before. The flat heel, even though I used to like K2s in the past, that was very different from the M12s I had skated prior to that. But anyway, won't go too far into that. But since I've been back, I've been sort of obsessing over finding the perfect boot fit and the perfect setup. Mainly because I'm crazy and I obsess over things, and it's sort of annoying, but that's just who I am. And also being someone who has a big foot, you're always trying to not have enormous boats of skates. They're clunky, they look stupid, and just having the closest fit to my foot is, there's so much more control. There is the aesthetic thing, but I don't want more plastic than I need to. The first skates I got getting back into it were ROCES M12s again. And those are what I had in the past. I used to really like them. And they felt pretty good right off the bat. I liked them. The one thing I noticed though is I was having a considerable amount of heel lift. And I don't really remember that being as much of an issue in the past, but I could very well have compensated with more padding or footbeds or heel pads or something like that. I know I fiddled around with that kind of thing, so who knows. But I thought that I remembered there being more individual shell sizing in the past. And when I noticed that my current M12s were listed as 11-12, and I'm sort of a solid 11, my feet measure 290 in length and 295. They're slightly different. So that's dead set 11. So I assumed that I was on the lower side of a shell thing, and maybe in the past the shells were different. Maybe there was an individual shell size for an 11. So I assumed that they were too long. So I went on the hunt for a skate that had a 10-11 shell versus an 11-12 shell. That led me to ROCES, because most other companies do 11-12 like ROCES. So I ended up ordering a pair of Henderson Razor SLs from Oak City Skate Shop. Probably the best shop ever, with the best guy ever running it. Long is so helpful. And, he took all kinds of measurements for me, and he was super helpful in helping me find a boot that would fit my foot better. So anyway, I got the SLs. I had also ordered some Intuition liners because I assumed since I was downsizing, I wouldn't be able to fit the stock liner. So I didn't get the stock liners. I just got the Intuition liners and the SL shell. Put the Intuition liner on my foot and then put it in the shell, and there was tons of extra room on the sides. So the SLs were definitely much wider than I needed them to be, but the length was spot on. Long helped me pick out a different liner. I ended up going with the MyFit Crown liner, and it was a perfect fit. The boot was really comfortable, things were good. But as the liner started to break in, and it's been really hot, so after skating for a while, I noticed there was still a little bit of side to side motion. Just felt slightly sloppy, something that I didn't have with the N12s. So I decided to start looking at the shells a little bit closer, and my initial sort of thing was trying to figure out how much wider they were than the M12s, because I knew the M12s were the right fit. So I was trying to figure out if there was some sort of other solution. So I took the shells apart and I compared them, and I discovered that the 1011 ROCES SL is the exact same length as the 1112 ROCES M12. They are identical. In fact, the SL actually looks slightly longer because it has this extra little ridge thing going on here, but they're spot on. The width difference is substantial. So both of these shells are 299 in length. And since I have a 295 foot, it doesn't get much better than that. So the SLs are 102 millimeters wide, and these are 92 millimeters wide. So that's a full centimeter difference in width. Another thing in terms of width that's confusing to me is that when I measure my foot, like the widest area is 110. So I assumed that, I don't know why 102 width on ROCES is huge and 92 on the M12 is spot on if my width is wider, but maybe I'm measuring the width weird, even though, I don't know. It's all very confusing to me. Maybe it's the curve of the boot. But all I know is the M12 is almost spot on width-wise and length-wise. And the SL, though it's the right length, it just needs a lot of extra padding. And I think on top of that, the fact that the bottoms are open, there's a lot more, well, there's more flex to the boot itself. So even it's extra wide and it's a lot flexier than the M12. So I think that's why it felt sloppy for my foot. I think if you had a wide foot, these would be fantastic and ideal for you. But since I had them all apart, I decided to take some measurements because the M12s are thought of as like the ultimate just lightweight skate. But I think the SL stands for super light. I could be wrong, but I think it does. They got rid of the whole footbed, so you sit directly on the sole plate. And you know, these are definitely very light. So I decided to weigh them and compare the differences, and found some interesting stuff that I thought I would share. This may be super boring and tedious for a lot of people. So if that's you, I would just, you know, move forward or close the video now. But some of you might find this interesting. And I just wanted to share a lot of this stuff with the measurements because I couldn't find accurate measurements of the M12, just like, oh, don't get them if you have narrow feet, or you have to size up with M12s. And, you know, that seems too broad and not specific enough. And if you are psychotically obsessive like myself, that's not a good enough answer. So if you are super nerdy in particular like me, this might be helpful for you. Okay, so let's talk about some weights here. So the SL shell, just like this, buckle, cuff, no sole plate, is 1 pound, 7.6 ounces. The M12, I weighed the one with the buckle. This one doesn't have a buckle on it, but they were like the same combination, is 1 pound, 8.4 ounces. So there's less than an ounce difference between the two, so they're almost identical. But what's interesting about that is the ROCES boot just is wide open on the bottom, where the ROCES boot is completely solid. And when you hold them and like squeeze the boot, this is a VALO, but it's the same shell. It's so much stiffer. Like, this is so squishy because there's no bottom to it. So it's interesting that they're nearly identical in weight like this. So while I was doing that, I figured I would weigh some other stuff. So I had experimented with running the VALO sole plates on my M12s because I thought that I might miss the wider sole plate of some of the SLs, and also I had skated shadows for a while before I stopped skating, so the narrow boot on the M12 was like, oh, I'm learning how to skate again, I need the extra sole width. Turns out that's not really true, but regardless, I got a bunch of VALO plates and I put them on, and since I had them, I decided to weigh them. So I have two different plates here. So this is the old style VALO sole plate, and this is called the 3-piece. What's interesting to me is that this is the old one that was replaced, but it seems, I mean, I'm not an engineer or industrial designer or anything like that, but this seems like such a better setup because it's all one solid piece. And you've got these replaceable little sole plates, and it's super simple. The sole plates are what attach to the boot, holds it in place. It's very sturdy. And what's interesting is this is considerably lighter than the newer VALO 2-piece sole plates. So this is the VALO 2-piece sole plate, and it's 2-piece because these things come apart and they just sort of click into place, and then they attach to the boot. So with the old design, if you wanted to replace the soles, if they got worn down or beat up, you could just replace those things, whereas this whole thing needs to be replaced. And the fact that it just sort of attaches here, I don't know, makes it seem like it could be kind of flexy. I don't know. They didn't feel flexy to me. But the weight on the old one is 15.8 ounces. The newer one is 1 pound, 1.3 ounces. So it's close. It's only a few ounces between them, but it's still, you know, a decent amount. It all adds up. I don't really necessarily care because I weigh 200 pounds and I'm not really that particular about weight, but it got me thinking about how the M12 is considered like the lightest skate, and I always hear how heavy the new Fifth Elements are. And the new Fifth Elements use these sole plates. They're just the rebranded VALO plates. And that leads me to believe that the reason the Fifth Elements are so heavy is because of these sole plates. So in comparison, this sole plate is 1 pound, 1.3 ounces. The M12 sole plate is only 10 ounces. So that's a considerable difference. That's like six ounces, I think. Don't check my math, but it's close to that. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So that leads me to believe that the only reason the Fifth Elements are a heavy skate is because of these sole plates. So just an interesting thought on that topic. And in terms of the sole plates, a lot of people have asked me like how big of a gap there is because these sole plates were meant to be used with a skin. And also on the Fifth Elements, the boots are wider to fit these sole plates. So there is definitely some gap. I have a shell here with those on there, and it's not that bad. So you can line it up so the front part is pretty good. And on the side here, it's a little bit, but you don't really notice it, especially when you're skating and if you're just looking at it. The biggest spot that there's a gap is on the inside back here. But again, it's not something you see when you're skating, and like at a distance, you don't notice it at all. That said, on my current setup, I am skating the regular M12 sole plates. I don't think the extra sole real estate is that crucial. And I like how, I just like the slim boot, and it just feels more direct. Like though the sole plate is smaller, it's a more direct lock when you're on something. So this is my current setup, M12s with the regular M12 sole plates, and I think it's great. So I got these MyFit crown liners to help me fit in the SLs, but when I realized that the M12 shells were the right length, I decided to try skating them again, and I decided to put these liners in. And these liners were the game changer for me because they eliminated all the heel lift that I had before. And because the skates are the right width for me and the right length, the fit couldn't be better. I don't think there's a skate that could fit me any better than this skate does right now. It's as tight and snug as it could possibly be without being uncomfortable. So it was a little bit of a journey for me to get here, but I'm super happy with this setup and they are great. In an ideal world, I would be skating them simply just because John Julio is a hero and I would love to support everything he does. So instead I try to just support his company and what other stuff he's doing with some t-shirts or whatever he's putting out or video things. I'll definitely support that stuff. But the 909 shells are barely too small, which means that the mediums are barely too small, which means the large is much too big for me. So yeah, so it's M12s for me, and I love them, psyched about them. The SLs are fantastic skates. I love them as well. They're just not a perfect fit for me. So hopefully some of this info was helpful for you. And yeah. If you like this kind of video, and you like this information, let me know. Leave a comment or thumbs up or something, because maybe I'll do more of this kind of thing. I'm not really too sure. I'm still not really sure what I'm doing with this channel. I really just started it to sort of document me coming back to skating after 10 years off and nearing 40. So I don't know. We got I think like 20 subscribers now, which is a small amount, but it's enough that it makes me consider that, oh, maybe people want to hear more or see more. So stay tuned. Last weekend was my first full month back, so I've been considering making like an edit of, stuff I've recorded in the first month since I've been skating again, just because edits are fun. We'll see if I have time for that, so stay tuned. Bye.